Jays fans, take a deep breath, because what I'm about to tell you could be the turning point of the entire Jays season. This isn't hype. This isn't an exaggeration. This is a team walking a tightrope, and one man holding the balance with his own two hands, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Let's rewind, because to understand the weight of this pressure, you need to feel the pain that came before it. 2025 was a roller coaster that nearly broke us emotionally. The Jays spent most of the year stumbling, sitting at a miserable 26-28 record through the end of May. Any fair-weather fan would have given up right there. But not us. We already knew this team had poison hidden up its sleeve.
And what came after was chilling. The Jays finished at the top of the American League. They entered the playoffs as favorites, but the road was never easy. It's never easy with Toronto. We fell behind 0-2 in the championship series against the Seattle Mariners, then 2-3. Every fan felt that old, familiar knot in their throat. Here we go again. Except this time, it was different. This group stood up, stared into the abyss, and flipped the script. The result? Toronto's first league title since 1993. 32 years of waiting, settled with one championship-caliber response. But fate still had one cruel chapter left. We came close, dangerously close, to writing one of the greatest fairy tales in modern baseball. But the Los Angeles Dodgers stood on the other side, and the World Series slipped right through our fingers. It hurt. It hurt badly. Only those who lived through it know the bitter taste of standing one step from immortality and not being able to take that final step.
And now, 2026. If you thought the suffering was over, you were wrong. This year has been a grinder for the Jays. The team has underperformed, disappointed at several points, and to make things worse, a wave of injuries swept through the roster. Key names went down. Core pieces of last year's league champion squad vanished from the day-to-day lineup, and what remained was a group fighting just to stay on its feet in the middle of a storm. Even so, and this is where hope stubbornly refuses to die, the Blue Jays are still alive in the fight for a wildcard spot. Tight even, as cruel as only baseball can be, but alive. And the man carrying the weight of it all on his shoulders knows exactly how big the problem is. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is not blind to the team's reality. He knows more is needed, and he knows he himself has to deliver more. But there's one thing nobody can take from him: the memory of what this group is capable of when its back is against the wall. He's already watched this team turn the impossible into reality. So even with everything crumbling around him, don't expect to see Vladdy flinch.
Is it time to believe again? Will this team respond at exactly the right moment, the way it did last year? Because if there's one thing we've learned from this roster, it's that underestimating the Blue Jays is always an expensive mistake. Let's get straight to the point nobody can ignore. The Blue Jays are, right now, in last place in the AL East. That hurts to write, and it hurts even more to read. The gap to the final wildcard spot sits at 3.5 games. Not a massive gap, but in a season this unstable, every single game weighs like it's the last one. Yet Saturday's game against the Chicago White Sox, a tough opponent sitting at 51-46, brought something we hadn't seen in a while: a team playing with purpose. Shane Bieber was surgical on the mound. He delivered 6 flawless innings, his best outing of the season, striking out 6 batters. In a rotation battered by injuries all year long, watching Bieber deliver a performance at that level is exactly the kind of sign that brings even the most skeptical fan back into believing. If his arm keeps holding up like that going forward, it completely changes how realistic this wildcard push actually is.
And it didn't stop there. George Springer, who had been dragging through a brutal first half of the season, showed up at exactly the right moment. He was the one who brought home the game-winning run with a ground ball single up the middle. For anyone following closely, that kind of simple, unspectacular, but opportunistic play is exactly what Springer needed to climb out of his slump and remind everyone what he's capable of when he's locked in. But the name that sums everything up, the soul of this response, the thread holding this entire season together, is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. If Toronto truly wants to overcome this curse of injuries and inconsistency that has haunted the roster since the start of the year, it's the face of the franchise who needs to hold the line. And on Saturday, once again, he held it. It was the second time in his last 4 games that Vladdy has recorded multiple hits, a sign that maybe, finally, he's climbing out of the slump that has worried fans so much.
His numbers tell a story of ups and downs, but also of resilience. A .265 batting average, 6 home runs, 41 RBIs, a .349 OBP, a .362 slugging percentage, and a .711 OPS. These aren't the MVP numbers we saw shine during last year's ALCS run, but they're the numbers of a player fighting, inning after inning, to carry his team even as everything around him falls apart. And now comes the chapter that decides where this series goes. The rubber match against the White Sox, Sunday afternoon. A game that looks like just another entry in the standings, but one that carries the weight of an entire season inside it. A win keeps the wild card flame alive, injects confidence into a clubhouse that desperately needs a positive stretch, and sends a clear message to every competitor in the race. The Blue Jays are not going down without a fight until the very last out.
That's why this moment matters so much. We're not talking about a team resting on last year's league title. We're talking about a group that bled to reach the World Series, watched glory slip away by inches against the Dodgers, and is now fighting to rediscover its identity in the middle of a season full of injuries and frustration. If there's one man who can carry this team on his back all the way to October, it's Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And if there's one thing the Jays' recent history has taught us, it's to never, ever count this team out too early. The question left hanging is simple, but it lands like a wrecking ball. Does this weekend mark the start of the turnaround? Or is it just another chapter of hope that fades in the stretch run?
And what came after was chilling. The Jays finished at the top of the American League. They entered the playoffs as favorites, but the road was never easy. It's never easy with Toronto. We fell behind 0-2 in the championship series against the Seattle Mariners, then 2-3. Every fan felt that old, familiar knot in their throat. Here we go again. Except this time, it was different. This group stood up, stared into the abyss, and flipped the script. The result? Toronto's first league title since 1993. 32 years of waiting, settled with one championship-caliber response. But fate still had one cruel chapter left. We came close, dangerously close, to writing one of the greatest fairy tales in modern baseball. But the Los Angeles Dodgers stood on the other side, and the World Series slipped right through our fingers. It hurt. It hurt badly. Only those who lived through it know the bitter taste of standing one step from immortality and not being able to take that final step. If this hit your chest the same way it hit mine, do this right now. Hit subscribe on Jays Fan Report and turn on notifications, because this final stretch of the season is going to be brutal, and I'll be here breaking down every play, every swing, every heartbreak. And don't leave without dropping a comment. Do you think the Blue Jays can still fight for that wild card spot, or is it already too late? Let me know down below. I want to read every single one. We are the most loyal fan base in baseball, and it's time to prove it. Jays Fan Report, because here we don't give up before the final out.